Have you ever woken up to find a house you've never seen, suddenly under your name? I did. $950,000 loan, my social, my credit, my name. I thought it was a mistake until I saw the housewarming invitation from my sister. Here's the truth nobody talks about. Identity theft doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it wears your last name. She used an old photo of my ID, forged pay stubs from my job, and bought a dream home with my life. I'm a financial fraud analyst. I've helped hundreds reclaim what was stolen, from bank accounts to reputations. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to spot the earliest signs of stolen identity, wipe fake debt clean in 7 days, and lock your credit even from people closest to you. This happened to Emily, 32, accountant, Seattle. Her sister faked her signature, bought a house, and blocked her on Instagram the same day. But in 14 days, Emily took back everything with the right steps. If someone in your life feels just a little too charming and your mail seems off, watch this now, because every minute you wait, they could be building a new life using yours. Before we dive into the story, I'd love to get to know you a little better. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. That way I can send you a special shout out. Now, let's begin our story together. I was halfway through spreading mashed avocado on rye toast when my phone buzzed on the counter. I expected it to be Liam with another corny meme or Kayla with a Slack notification. But it wasn't a meme. It wasn't a work ping. It was a notification from West Sound Mortgage Group. Reminder, your next payment of $4,080 is due April 15th for loan, JXXX 427, property, 3198 Magnolia View Lane. I stood there holding the butter knife like it was suddenly a weapon. Magnolia View Lane. That wasn't my address. That wasn't any address I recognized. And $4,180? That was nearly my entire monthly take-home pay. For someone who budgeted down to the last K-Cup pot and labeled her folders Tax Records 2018 Present and Emergency Fund Touch Only If Dying, this made no sense. Dad always said, track every dollar like it's a soldier on a battlefield. I did. I tracked them like a commander. Even my weekly coffee splurges lived on a color-coded spreadsheet. So how could someone take out a $950,000 loan in my name? I wiped my hands on the dish towel and opened my laptop with the speed of a startled cat. My fingers moved fast, too fast, typing in the bank's number while logging into my Mint account and freezing mid-click when the hold music started. West Sound Mortgage. This is Heather. How may I assist you today? Yes, hi. I just got a notification about a loan under my name. I didn't apply for anything. I don't even own property. Okay, let's take a look. May I verify your full name and the last 4 of your social? I rattled them off without thinking. She typed. I heard the polite rhythm of keyboard taps. Yes, I do see a mortgage account opened 2 months ago under your name and SSN. The property is located in Magnolia Hills. It's a jumbo loan, 30-year fixed rate. Co-signer column is marked NA. I never signed anything, I said, trying not to panic. That's fraud. We can file a report to escalate, and I suggest contacting the credit bureaus immediately to freeze your file. I thanked her, hung up, and stared blankly at my screen. Then, almost on autopilot, I stood up and walked to the hallway mail tray. I usually collected it once a week, but something told me to check. There it was, right on top, a cream-colored envelope with glitter along the edges and a wax seal with an S. Sophie, you're invited. Our dream home, housewarming this Saturday, 3198 Magnolia View Lane, Seattle. Come see what love and hard work, so I can build. I stared at the glossy card, the little photo in the corner of Sophie and her boyfriend Jonah, standing in front of a 2-story Craftsman with a blue door and wraparound porch. She was smiling like she owned the world. Magnolia Hills, her dream neighborhood. I didn't even remember the toast until the smoke alarm chirped. I pulled it from the toaster oven, burnt, of course, and chucked it into the sink. My hands shook as I made tea. The kettle whistled too loud. The mint bag tore when I pulled it too hard. Everything was off. By the time Liam walked in, I was sitting at the kitchen table, a half-filled mug in my hand, the invitation lying like a crime scene photo between us. "What's this?" he asked, his voice low and even. I told him about the text, the mortgage, the credit freeze, Sophie. My voice cracked once, but I didn't cry. He didn't interrupt. He let me unravel it all until I reached the end. She used my name, Liam, my identity, for a house. He picked up the invitation, turned it over, and then met my eyes. "You're not crazy," he said, voice warm. "We'll figure this out. You always do." I don't even know how to begin. Start with what you know and what you don't remember agreeing to. After he went to shower, I opened my laptop again, heart racing. I pulled up my Experian account, holding my breath like I was about to find my name carved into a gravestone. There it was, 1 active mortgage, 3 new credit cards, all opened within the last 60 days, all linked to 3198 Magnolia View Lane. My name, my social, my birthday, my ruin. I closed the tab, hands numb. I didn't even remember breathing as I walked to the bedroom window. It had started to rain again. Seattle rain, fine and steady like the sky couldn't quite commit to crying. That's when Kayla's voice echoed in my head from a Zoom call just last week. "Don't let your sister charm you into another favor. Girl could get free airfare on just a wink." Back then, I'd laughed. I always laughed when it came to Sophie. Because if I didn't laugh, I'd have to admit how much it hurt, how she always got what she wanted, and I was always the means. I turned from the window and looked at the mirror above my dresser. My face looked the same, but something inside me had already cracked. I whispered aloud, like saying it might make it real. I didn't co-sign anything. So how did Sophie get everything she wanted under my name? By the time I walked into Pacific Equity Bank, I had 3 credit reports printed, 4 hours of sleep, and 0 doubt that someone had stolen my identity. The air smelled faintly of wet pavement and burnt coffee, Seattle's signature perfume on a weekday morning. My coat dripped a quiet rhythm on the polished tile as I stepped through the security glass. "Emily Carson?" a voice called from a glass-walled office just past the reception counter. I nodded and followed a tall man with salt and pepper hair and calm eyes. His nameplate read Gregory Lane, Senior Risk and Fraud Analyst. He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. "Ms. Carson, I've reviewed your file since your call yesterday. I'd like to walk you through what we found." He pulled up a screen and tilted it gently toward me. A mortgage application filled the page, my name at the top, my social security number, my current address. Then, farther down, digital pay stubs from the accounting firm I worked for, a scanned image of my driver's license, and a signature that looked almost like mine. Almost. I leaned in, squinting. "That's not my current ID." Gregory nodded. "The photo matches your file from DMV records 5 years ago, the one you would have had prior to your renewal." I froze. 5 years ago. Brunch with Sophie at that overpriced rooftop place. I remembered balancing my wallet on the ledge of the patio planter while we took a photo. I never found it afterward. I had blamed myself. Reordered everything. Never thought twice. "She must have taken it," I said under my breath. "Excuse me?" "Nothing," I lied, just thinking out loud. He clicked through another screen. The IP address from which this application was submitted traces back to a residential Comcast router in North Seattle. That's not your current address, correct? "No, but I'd bet money it's my sister's." "Do you live together?" "No, haven't since college. We're different." Gregory didn't press. Instead, he clicked a few keys and printed a copy of the mortgage document. The printer behind him began churning, loud and insistent in the quiet office. I watched it spit out page after page, each one documenting the slow unraveling of my control. "Thank you," I said finally. He handed me a manila folder, polite and neutral. "I'd suggest filing a report with the FTC and placing a full identity theft alert on your credit. I'll also start an internal fraud case here. It'll take time, but we'll do everything we can." I nodded and walked out of the bank with the folder clutched to my chest like armor. Outside, the clouds hung heavy, and traffic moved like molasses. I didn't have tears left, but I had folders, and if rage could be organized, I was doing it alphabetically. By noon, I was back at my apartment, the kettle whistling and my hands slicing open an envelope labeled TransUnion. My entire dining table was now a battlefield of colored tabs, timelines, sticky notes, and flagged copies. "You still upright?" Liam's voice drifted in from the doorway. "Barely," I replied, not looking up. He set down 2 sandwiches and my favorite chai latte. "You don't have to do all this alone." I hesitated. "What if I can't fix it?" "You can. But even if you couldn't, I'd still be here." It was quiet a moment before he added, "I talked to someone. A guy named Ian Delgado, private investigator, used to work white-collar crime. He helps people in messes like this." I blinked. "You hired a PI?" "I talked to him. You'd have to hire him officially, but he said he'd take a look. No pressure." I didn't answer right away. Pride is a funny thing. You can be drowning in evidence and still think asking for help makes you weak. "Let me talk to him," I said finally. Liam nodded and stepped into the bedroom to call. A moment later, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. "Emily Carson?" a voice said, crisp, direct, but not unkind. "This is Ian Delgado," he continued. "Liam told me a bit. You've got a paper trail. That's good. Mind sending it to me? I'll take a preliminary look, see what I can turn up." I emailed him a PDF file labeled "Mortgage Fraud, Emily, Do Not Delete." While I waited, I organized another folder just to feel like I had control. A calm kind of fury lived under my skin, quiet and focused. At 8:12 p.m., my phone buzzed again. One new text, "Ian Delgado. Found it, property deed filed under your name. Occupants listed, Sophie Carson and Jake Morrison." Jake Morrison. I hadn't heard that name in years. Sophie's on-again, off-again partner, the one she once claimed was the love of her 30s. I didn't move, didn't reply, just stared at the glowing screen and the name that should have never been there. Sophie hadn't just used me. She'd moved into my life, made it hers. The last time Sophie hugged me, she said, "You'll thank me one day." At the time, I thought she meant the leftover risotto recipe. Now I realize she meant the mortgage. It was early Sunday morning, and I was still in my flannel pajama pants, sipping lukewarm coffee, when I opened Instagram out of habit. Sophie's post loaded slowly, like it knew it was about to ruin my day. There she was, posing in front of a sprawling white-columned house, hydrangeas blooming on either side, her arm wrapped around Jake's waist. His teeth gleamed too brightly, and her caption made my stomach knot. "Earned it. Work hard, play. Hard-numb new beginnings." I stared at the photo until my screen dimmed. Earned it? With what? My credit score? When I tried to tap again, the post disappeared. I refreshed. Nothing. Then I checked her profile. User not found. Sophie had blocked me. No fight, no warning, just vanished me, like she'd snipped me out of the frame. The coffee turned sour in my mouth. I set my phone down, went to the sink, and rinsed the mug twice before I realized I hadn't taken another sip. The apartment felt smaller than usual, as if her silence filled every corner. I stood in front of the hall mirror, pulling a cardigan over my shoulders, staring at my own reflection like I needed permission to go through with it. I grabbed the crumpled invitation from the recycling bin before I left. Thick cardstock, gold foil letters. "You're invited. Sophie and Jake's dream home housewarming." That word, dream, felt personal. The family home still looked the same. Pale yellow siding, black shutters, and the familiar wreath on the door, woven grapevine with plastic sunflowers. Mom answered wearing her Weekend Wonder apron, the one with the daisy stitched at the collar. Her lipstick was a little too pink. "Emily, you made it," she chirped, kissing my cheek. "I just pulled lemon scones out of the oven. Sophie's favorite. Remember?" I nodded. How could I forget? The kitchen was bright and smelled of citrus and butter. It should have been comforting. but something about the warmth felt performative, like a smile that didn't reach the eyes. Dad sat at the table, eyes flicking between the Seattle Times and me. The clock above the sink ticked half a beat behind. Even the photo on the mantel hadn't changed. Sophie's graduation beaming in her cap and gown. I was there, holding the camera, but cropped out of the final frame. We sat in our usual spots. I took a scone and buttered it slowly, more to buy time than out of hunger. Mom chatted about the neighbor's new puppy and a divine new brunch spot she wanted to try. I waited until her second refill of tea. "Sophie's new house looks nice," I said, trying to sound casual. Mom lit up. "Oh, it's gorgeous. She has such a flair for decorating, doesn't she? Did you see what she did with the front porch? Hanging planters, string lights." I told her it looked like a magazine spread. Must have cost a lot. Dad rustled his newspaper louder. I leaned forward. I got a notice from Pacific Equity about a mortgage in my name. Mom's spoon clinked too hard against the teacup. Her smile stiffened. "Are you sure? Maybe it's a mix-up." "I'm sure." Dad finally spoke. "Well, your name might have come up." I set my tea down. "Why?" Mom placed both hands on the table like she was centering herself. "Sophie and Jake, well, they've had a tough year. He lost that consulting gig, and she's been trying to freelance. You've always been the stable one. We just thought you'd understand. I didn't co-sign anything." Mom glanced at Dad. "Maybe you forgot. You're busy. You handle so many things." "I track every dollar," I said quietly. "Even my coffee budget has its own sheet." Dad muttered, "Let's not ruin the morning, Emily." The rest of brunch was a blur. Mom talked about Sophie's plans to paint the kitchen teal. She packed up the last lemon scone in a tin with a red bow. "Let's save this for Soph," she said with a gentle smile. "She'll stop by later." As if she were the guest of honor, as if I didn't exist. Back at my apartment, the clouds had thickened. Rain fell in steady rhythms, a Seattle lullaby. I tossed my coat on the chair and stared at the paperwork still fanned across my dining table. My phone buzzed. "Kayla, popcorn for the housewarming? Or is this more of a flamethrower situation?" I didn't answer. Then came another buzz, an unknown number. "Emily, it's Ian Delgado." I straightened. "We might have something. A repair shop on Capitol Hill. The owner remembered a woman, your sister, coming in 3 weeks ago. Said she needed help editing PDFs. Told him it was for her baby sister." He paused. "She called him Tech Boy. Left a big tip, though." My stomach turned. "She edited my signature?" He didn't confirm. He didn't need to. I thanked him and hung up. For the next hour, I didn't speak, didn't blink much. I just assembled. Mortgage documents, copies of my ID, printouts of the fake digital signature, Ian's note, the receipt from the tech shop, even the Yelp page showing the exact check-in date. I labeled everything and slid them into a plastic folder, a version of order, a shield. Then I opened a new email. To Gregory Lane. Subject, formal fraud evidence. Carson case. Body. Hi, Gregory. Please find attached all documents related to the fraudulent mortgage. I've included recent information tying my sister directly to document tampering. Let me know the next steps. Best, Emily Carson. I clicked send. Then I pulled the housewarming invite from my coat pocket, smoothed it across the table, and stared at Sophie's cursive signature printed in gold. "See you at your housewarming," I said aloud, voice steady. "I'll bring paperwork." Dear friend, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I bet you can't guess what's coming next. But before we go any further, drop a 5 in the comments if you're still with me, because what happens next might just leave you speechless. Sophie's face dropped the second she saw me by the champagne tower. For once, she didn't have a script. Her smile faltered mid-syllable, and for half a beat, she looked like a child caught sneaking dessert before dinner. The music thrummed from the backyard speakers, soft jazz overlaid with the clink of crystal glasses, strings of fairy lights draped across the eaves, bouncing light off the engraved napkins that read, "Morrison Carson, New Beginnings." A rented bartender stirred something pink and expensive near the patio. I didn't belong here, and yet every document in my bag said otherwise. Sophie finally reached me, her tone sugar-coated and tight. "Emily, I didn't see your RSVP." I didn't send one, I replied, holding her gaze. But since the mortgage is in my name, I figured it would be rude not to show up. She blinked once, then again. Her mouth opened, closed. Around us, the party shifted, like someone had turned a dimmer down just a notch. Nothing dramatic, but the temperature dropped in the way only truth can. "Can we talk?" she said through her teeth, gesturing toward the side hallway. I let her lead me past the hors d'oeuvres table and into a narrow laundry room, fluorescent and quiet. "What are you doing here?" she snapped, the hospitality dropping like a coat on a hook. "You mean besides trying to figure out why my credit report now includes a $950,000 mortgage and 3 credit cards I never applied for?" I asked, pulling out the printed documents. I laid them gently on the dryer. Signature comparisons, a notarized statement from the repair shop confirming a PDF edit request, and a copy of the identity theft police report. Her eyes scanned the papers. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "No," I said, voice calm. "You're underestimating the proportions." Sophie's expression softened suddenly, weaponized vulnerability. "You always had more, Emily. Stability, respect. Mom and Dad actually listened to you. I needed a chance." "You didn't borrow a chance," I said quietly. "You borrowed me." Her lips parted like she had a retort, but nothing came. I reached into my coat pocket and handed her a card. "Gregory Lane, Fraud Department. He'll be in touch." Then I turned toward the door, and maybe she thought I was done, but I wasn't. As I stepped back into the hallway, Jake Morrison was approaching with 2 champagne flutes in hand. His expression shifted when he saw me. "Emily, right? Sophie's sister?" "That's right," I said, not smiling. He nodded at the papers still in my hand. "What's going on?" Before Sophie could answer, I said clearly enough for the nearby guests to hear. "She didn't just fake a signature. She filed a mortgage under my name." The air changed again. Not loud, but intentional. A fork clattered onto a plate. Someone whispered, "Did she say mortgage?" Jake stiffened. "Wait, what do you mean it's not in your name?" I turned fully to face him. "Check the title, Jake. I own this place." For a moment, no one moved. Then Jake's brow creased, and he looked at Sophie. "Is this true?" She tried to laugh, but it sounded like a choke. "She's just exaggerating. It's family stuff." But the crowd had shifted. Phones hovered uncertainly, eyes narrowed behind polite smiles. The illusion was unraveling. I walked past them all, past the realtor who'd handed Sophie her card earlier, past the caterer refilling the shrimp tray, past the college friend whispering into her wine, and I didn't look back. Outside, I texted Ian one word: cracked. His reply came seconds later. "On my way." I used to think Sophie just wanted to be seen. The prettier one, the louder one, the one who lit up a room even if she didn't know how to pay the electric bill. And for a while, I didn't mind. I played the background, the spreadsheets, the responsible one. But this wasn't a spotlight she could borrow. She'd stepped into my legal identity and worn it like a dress she planned to return. From the buffet table, someone whispered, "Isn't that her sister?" Another, "Wait, wasn't that House?" And then nothing. Just music and glasses clinking, and the quiet shock that follows when people realize something real is happening behind curated smiles. A realtor I vaguely recognized leaned in. "Lovely neighborhood," she said, trying to steer the tension into something palatable. I met her eyes and said simply, "It is. That's why I wanted to buy here. Pity I didn't get the keys myself." Her face froze for a split second before she smiled and backed away. Sophie didn't follow me back into the party. Neither did Jake. I imagined their conversation behind that closed door. Maybe he asked how far this had gone. Maybe she told him it was just a misunderstanding, a family thing. Maybe he believed her, but maybe not. I didn't need the whole room to know the details. Just enough to shift the balance. Just enough to reclaim my name from under someone else's fantasy. As I stepped out onto the front lawn, the cold was sharper now, more honest. The sky over Magnolia Hills was clear, scattered with stars you couldn't always see in Seattle. I looked up and felt the kind of tired that comes not from running, but from standing still too long. In the distance, the valet raised a hand to wave goodbye. I nodded back, grateful for the silence, for the end of the performance. I didn't feel like celebrating, but I did feel something close to whole. That would be enough for tonight. The voicemail came on a Tuesday morning, 3 days after the housewarming. My phone buzzed against the kitchen counter as I poured hot water over a lavender tea bag. I didn't answer. Not out of anger, but out of a strange, quiet clarity. I just let it ring. Sophie's voice, brittle and forced, filled the voicemail box. "Emily, hey, look, we can fix this. I know things got weird. If you cancel the fraud report, I'll put your name back on everything. I swear. Let's just talk before you do anything drastic." Drastic. That word settled like fog on the windows. I stood by the counter, breathing in the scent of lemon zest and paperwork. Certified mail sat in a neat pile to my left. 1 from the bank, 2 from Gregory, 1 from the county assessor's office. All of them carrying weight, legal weight. I didn't play the message again. The knock on the door came just after 11. I wasn't surprised. I'd felt it coming since the night of the party, the reckoning. When I opened it, there they were, my parents, Ellen and Charles Carson. No warning, no umbrella, just damp jackets, tense shoulders, and a kind of practiced expression that said, "We're here to smooth it all over." "Can we come in?" Mom asked, not waiting for an answer. Dad lingered in the doorway, always the quieter one, always the one with the ledger. I gestured toward the kitchen. "There's tea. Still warm if you want." They didn't touch it. Instead, Mom sat with her purse still on her shoulder. Dad leaned on the back of the chair, but didn't sit. "You're tearing the family apart," Mom said, straight to the point. This report, this drama, it's not who you are." I didn't flinch. It's not who I am to steal someone's identity either. "She didn't mean to steal," Dad said, voice low and almost pleading. "She panicked. She thought you'd understand." Understand? I reached for the top envelope in the stack, the one from the county office, and opened it with care. "I want you to read something," I said. I slid the document across the table. It's a summary of Title 18 RCW, Section 6011. In Washington, intentional misrepresentation on a mortgage document voids protections typically granted in family disputes. It's law, Dad, not drama. Mom shifted. Her eyes scanned the paper but didn't seem to absorb it. She said it was a misunderstanding. She said you'd overreact. My hand hovered over the next envelope, then paused. "Is that what you think I'm doing?" Silence. The phone rang again. I checked the screen. Gregory. I took the call, stepping just far enough from the table so they couldn't hear every word, but not so far that they didn't know it was serious. "Yes," I said into the receiver. "Yes, I've reviewed the affidavits. The freeze is in place? Good. What about the credit lines?" I nodded slowly. "Thank you. I'll wait for the formal notice." When I returned, my parents looked smaller somehow, or maybe I was just seeing them clearly for the first time. There was a soft knock at the door. I knew who it was before I opened it. Ian Delgado stood there with a flash drive and a brown envelope in hand. "Got it," he said simply. "Everything she said at the tech shop is on here. Plus one more thing, audio clip. You'll want to hear it." He didn't come in, just passed it off like a torch. I thanked him and closed the door behind me. Back at the table, I slid the flash drive into my laptop. My hands didn't shake. The audio started with static. Then Sophie's voice, casual, almost amused. "If she finds out, we'll say it was a gift. She always folds. Just sign like you're rushing. Her signature's messy anyway." There it was. Not a misunderstanding. A strategy. Mom blinked. Her mouth opened, then closed. Dad stared at his shoes. "I don't fold," I said, voice steady. "Not anymore." The tea I'd poured them sat untouched, steam gone, like the warmth had left the room entirely. For a while, no one said anything. Then Mom whispered, so soft I almost missed it. She said you'd never fight back. That's when I reached for my own cup. It was cold now, bitter at the edges, but I drank it anyway. On the kitchen table beneath the certified mail sat a yellow legal pad. At the top of the page, in all caps, I'd written, "Things I never said until now," and just under that, 1. I was never the quiet one. I was just the one you never listened to. By the time April settled into Seattle, the cherry blossoms were nearly gone, but the air still carried the soft scent of change. I stood on the front steps of the Magnolia Hills house, my house now officially. A moving truck pulled away slowly, its tires grumbling against the curb. Inside the house, every wall had been wiped clean. No paintings, no candles, no evidence that Sophie had ever lived here, except for a faint outline where a frame once hung crookedly above the fireplace. The quitclaim deed had arrived 2 weeks earlier, signed, notarized. No apology, no explanation, just a name scrawled with bitterness, tucked inside a manila envelope. As part of the settlement, Sophie forfeited all rights to the property in exchange for avoiding criminal charges. I didn't fight it. I didn't ask for more. I just wanted the space back, stripped of her lies. The door creaked as I stepped inside. Echoes met me in every corner. The hardwood floors gleamed in the afternoon sun, clean and empty. It felt like a stage that had finally gone quiet after a loud, chaotic play. I walked slowly through each room. The kitchen where the forged pay stubs had once been scanned. The guest room that had probably been staged for social media. The laundry room where she had whispered justifications. It was all mine now, and I had no intention of keeping it. Still, I paused in the living room, where fairy lights had once wrapped around the curtain rods. I pressed my palm to the window and breathed in the silence. For the first time in months, my name, just mine, was the only one on the title. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like release. I called the realtor that afternoon. "Hi, this is Emily Carson. I'm ready to list the Magnolia property." She was cheerful, efficient. We scheduled an appraisal for the following week. That evening, I met Liam at a diner on the edge of the neighborhood. We chose it for the pie, not the ambiance. He brought 2 slices of blackberry, one topped with melting vanilla ice cream. He didn't say much, just slid a plate toward me and waited. "I'm not keeping the house," I said finally, stirring my tea, but I needed to know I could reclaim it first, before I let it go. He nodded. Sometimes healing doesn't look like holding on. Sometimes it's choosing what to set down. I smiled quietly. "You always sound like you read too many fortune cookies." He laughed and reached across the table, resting his fingers over mine. Or maybe I just listen. The next morning, I returned with Ian to meet the appraiser. He carried a clipboard. I carried the last piece of Sophie's mess, a small box of abandoned jewelry and expired makeup we found tucked behind the guest bathroom sink. "She really thought she could just become you," Ian muttered, his tone somewhere between disbelief and pity. I didn't answer. Some ghosts aren't worth addressing. While the appraiser walked through the house, I stood in what used to be the master bedroom. The light hit the far wall just right, casting long shadows across the hardwood. I had always imagined building something here, maybe not a forever home, but a beginning. What I got instead was a lesson, the difference between ownership and belonging. I had the deed now, but I would never belong to the version of family that needed my silence more than my truth. Outside, Ian handed me a sealed envelope. "Gregory's closing statement. You'll want it for your records." I nodded and tucked it into my tote, next to the lavender candle from my apartment, a small piece of calm in a storm that had finally passed. That evening, Liam helped me box the final few items. "You sure you want to sell?" he asked, holding a set of tarnished house keys. "You won." I looked around the empty house one last time. I didn't come here to win. I came to reclaim. We walked out together, the door clicking shut behind us. Later, back in my own apartment, I lit the candle. The scent drifted upward, soft and clean. I opened a fresh notebook and titled the first page, Next. That text from Sophie? It never arrived again, but even if it did, I wouldn't need to open it. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from finally choosing yourself. As I curled into the couch, phone in hand, I opened the digital contact form from my health provider. I scrolled down to the section labeled Emergency Contact. For years, it had said Mom. I backspaced slowly, then typed Liam Bennett. I hovered for a moment before hitting save. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't angry, I was just done. For once, Sophie's script had ended, and mine had begun. I used to think justice was about courtrooms, signatures, and paperwork, but when I changed my emergency contact from Mom to Liam, I realized sometimes the truest justice is choosing who stays in your life. Family isn't always where we come from. It's where we're heard, respected, and never used as someone else's shortcut. And if someone tells you you're too strong to need protecting, remember, strength deserves peace too. If this story reminded you of a time you stayed quiet for the sake of peace, or a time you finally spoke up for yourself, feel free to share. Your voice might be just what someone else needs to hear today, and if this story touched your heart, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more stories about resilience and hope. Thanks for watching.